I kind of want to expand a little bit on what this moment of catalyst is that we've been experiencing this summer. In my personal experience, it doesn't feel like it's just because of the murder that we saw on camera, the lynching of George Floyd on camera. I think it had a lot to do with Breonna Taylor, and also a lot to do with years and years and years of buildup, of murders, of pervasive systemic racism, and as Barbara, you point out so wonderfully, the virulent spirit of white supremacy that's in this country. And I feel like those instances of violence is kind of what sparked the uprising, of course, as well as the coronavirus pandemic and the shutdowns. A lot of people, I think, have just been angry and frustrated at the government's response or lack of response to the very deadly conditions that we're all living under every day. I thought for a very long time, in the beginning of June, was it safe for me to go out in public? Would I be putting myself and my family and my community at risk? But really the kind of driving factor that brought me out to the streets was, as I thought to myself, if we don't stand up and fight for each other now, who's gonna be left to stand up and fight for us later? And so I took to the streets every single day, starting on June 1st. And I mean, me and my comrades, we did maybe some days 3 or 4 protests a day, hopping around the city. And then I want us to have a dialogue, but from how I see it, where I am, so we had this kind of moment of extreme uprisings in June that have continued in a number of ways, not just protesting on the streets, but really leaning into more mutual aid, leaning into more ways that we can keep and protect each other, keep each other safe and protect each other, how we can reimagine what safety looks like, not just when we think about police violence and incarceration, but when we think about access to fresh water, to housing, to healthcare, and safe food as well. And so I think that the uprising has moved from the streets, although it still very much so exists in the streets, to a real movement of us who are all making a concerted effort to reimagine what the world could look like if we were to come together and keep each other safe, because the systems that purport you never will. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear how the uprising looks like from your perspective, Barbara.
I haven't seen anything quite like this. I think it's a really difficult time, and it's although I've been doing nothing but organizing, it seems, during practically the entire time. Of course, the pandemic has been not managed in any reasonable way on a national level, so it puts us all in so much more danger. I see a huge amount of passion among people who did take the risk and do take the risk of being out in the street. And in fact, one of the things that I was doing in the early spring was concentrating on trying to get Governor Cuomo, who everybody thinks is a hero, to put into motion policies to get people out of the prisons, which are just cauldrons, of course, of danger around the pandemic and around the virus. So we would have car caravans, and I would find myself, cutting open a grocery bag and carefully writing things like COVID, COVID equals death, and free them all, and things like that, and taking them to my car. And then we would, we coordinated all of that. And I was one of the organizers for those kinds of actions. So as I said, early days, concentrating on issues around prison and getting elders and other people who are vulnerable out of prison. And then with the lynching of George Floyd, a few days after that, I found myself doing something unusual, which was writing without having an assignment. And I started writing about white supremacy. And as of yesterday, I've written 3 articles about white supremacy, because that's what's happening here. I think that this period has revealed, if you didn't know it already, all of the contradictions of living in an oppressive society, a capitalist society, a heteropatriarchal society, a racist society, a white supremacist society. So that's what we're dealing with. And we'll see what the next chapter is. I think we'll be talking about some of that as this conversation goes on this evening. Challenging time to be doing organizing, and yet a lot of energy and a lot of passion around justice.
Thank you so much, Josh and Barbara, for sharing your thoughts on what we're seeing really in this moment. What I'm getting from what you're sharing is really that we're not seeing a single catalyst moment, but we're experiencing the accumulation of all of these moments throughout history that have really created the reality that we live in today. And what's happened is that it's ignited people in ways that we really haven't seen before.